Eva had always been an ordinary woman leading a simple life. At 26, she wasn't expecting much excitement, just the daily grind of survival. She had 2 young children, one on the way, and a life that felt full, yet incredibly fragile. A few months ago, she had been living with her boyfriend, Luke, in a modest apartment. They had dreams of starting a family, buying a house, and one day, being able to relax and enjoy life. But reality had dealt her a blow. Luke had walked out, leaving her pregnant, struggling, and feeling more isolated than ever. She never thought she would be in this position. Abandoned by someone she trusted, the father of her unborn child now nothing more than a fading memory, she found herself with 2 kids to care for and a life to rebuild. The small town where she lived wasn't exactly a bustling metropolis, but it had its charm, tight-knit, where everyone knew everyone's business. That's what made things difficult for Eva. There was no anonymity here, no room to escape the judgment of the community. And now, the community would see her, not as the woman she was, but as the abandoned mother, struggling to make it on her own. She had no choice but to move on. With her due date fast approaching, she knew maternity leave was a luxury she couldn't afford. Her bills piled up, and the few jobs she could get were not enough to cover her expenses. Desperation led her to find a job at a local diner, a place known for its bustling crowds and long hours. Eva wasn't thrilled about working there, but she knew she had to make ends meet. The waitress position wasn't glamorous, but it paid in cash, and that was all that mattered to her right now. The first few weeks were hard. Every morning, Eva would struggle to get out of bed, her back aching, her legs swollen, and her energy depleted from the weight of both her pregnancy and the responsibilities she now carried alone. But she kept pushing forward, one day at a time. The diner wasn't the worst place to work, it was busy, which meant tips, and it was full of regulars who came in daily, ordering the same meals, giving her some sense of routine. On her first day, she was introduced to a team of people who were kind enough but kept their distance. It was clear that the regulars saw her as a temporary fixture, just another waitress who would come and go. But Eva couldn't afford to be temporary. She had to prove herself, to show that she could make it, that she wasn't a failure. Every shift, she worked tirelessly, carrying trays of food, wiping down tables, and smiling through the exhaustion. She told herself it would get easier, that soon enough, she would be able to save up enough money for maternity leave and make the most of the time with her newborn. But things never went as planned. One slow afternoon, the diner was relatively empty. It wasn't unusual, especially during the weekdays, but Eva still felt the familiar tension in her chest as she wiped down the counter. The bell above the door jingled, signaling the arrival of a new customer. Eva's eyes shifted to the door as a couple walked in, 2 strangers. They were dressed sharply, their clothes immaculate despite the heat of the midday sun. They looked out of place, like they didn't belong in a small-town diner. The man was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and an air of confidence about him. The woman beside him was elegant, with a soft smile and eyes that seemed to hold a secret, though Eva couldn't pinpoint what that secret was. Eva smiled politely as they walked in, greeting them like any other customer, though she couldn't help but notice that the couple didn't speak to each other much. Instead, they exchanged quiet glances, as if communicating in some way only they understood. It was the kind of quiet intimacy that Eva found foreign, the kind of connection that seemed to suggest something far deeper than simple affection. They sat at a corner booth, away from the main traffic of the diner, and the man gave Eva a brief nod, indicating that he was ready to order. As she approached the table, she noticed the couple's strange behavior. They weren't speaking to each other, at least not directly. Instead, they whispered softly in a language Eva didn't recognize. It wasn't uncommon for people to speak in foreign tongues around town. There was a small international community, though not many people knew their stories. Eva had learned to tune it out over time, but there was something about these 2 that made her uneasy. The couple's presence felt different, as if they were deliberately hiding something. Eva's mind raced as she took their orders, but her gut told her something wasn't right. Days went by, and the couple returned each afternoon, sitting in the same booth. Each time, they spoke softly, and Eva found herself unable to resist listening in. It wasn't like she was trying to eavesdrop, she just couldn't help but notice the hushed conversations that seemed to carry weight. One afternoon, while serving them, she overheard snippets of their conversation. They were speaking about money, large sums of money. Eva froze for a moment, trying not to appear obvious, but her curiosity got the better of her. She caught phrases like delivery, shipment, and payment. She knew it wasn't her business, but her instincts told her this was more than just a casual chat. This was something else entirely. Her heart raced. She wasn't sure what to make of it. Was it just a misunderstanding? Or was something darker happening right under her nose? Eva tried to push the thought aside, telling herself she was overreacting. But it nagged at her. It wasn't like her to pry, but she couldn't ignore the growing sense of suspicion. For days, she'd heard the same cryptic exchanges between the couple, their foreign language sounding more urgent with each passing moment. Then one afternoon, it happened. She was serving a table near the couple's booth when the woman gave her a brief smile. It was the kind of smile that felt too rehearsed, too deliberate. Eva felt a shiver run down her spine. As she passed their booth to clear the plates, she heard the woman speak in a tone that was just above a whisper, "You shouldn't listen to things that aren't meant for you." The words lingered in the air long after Eva had moved on to another task. A wave of unease washed over Eva. Was it a threat? A warning? Or was she reading too much into it? But deep down, she knew the truth, something was going on, something she wasn't supposed to know about. The next day, Eva was cleaning up after a rush when she saw the couple talking to the diner's owner. They seemed to be making some sort of arrangement, though Eva couldn't hear the details. It wasn't long before the couple left abruptly, just like they always did. But something felt different this time. Eva's gut told her that she had just witnessed the beginning of something far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. Her mind raced as she thought about the words the woman had whispered to her. You shouldn't listen to things that aren't meant for you. What did that mean? What could they be involved in? She had no answers, only more questions, and a sinking feeling in her stomach. Little did she know, the strange couple was about to change the course of her life forever. But for now, she just focused on getting through another shift. There was nothing more she could do. Or so she thought. Eva's routine at the diner had become almost automatic. She had settled into the daily grind of working long shifts, juggling the demands of her job with the pressures of impending motherhood. Each day was a delicate balancing act, one where she had to smile through the exhaustion, serve the food with a cheery demeanor, and put on a brave face even though she felt like she was barely holding it together. Her stomach grew rounder with each passing day, and the weight of carrying her unborn child was becoming more burdensome, but Eva refused to show weakness. She needed the job. She needed the money. Maternity leave was a distant hope she couldn't afford to dream about just yet. Still, the presence of the mysterious couple lingered in the back of her mind. They had continued to come to the diner every day, sitting in their corner booth, whispering to each other in that foreign language, their conversations a steady undercurrent of curiosity and tension. Eva had learned to listen in more closely, even though she told herself that it wasn't right. But the truth was, she couldn't help it. Something about them didn't sit right with her. It wasn't just their foreignness, it was the way they spoke in secretive tones, the way they looked over their shoulders, as if they were hiding something from the world. Eva had always prided herself on her instincts, and her gut told her that whatever was going on with them was much bigger than she could possibly understand. She began to notice strange things happening around the diner. One day, a man she had never seen before entered and spoke briefly with the couple in hushed tones. He looked out of place, as if he didn't belong in a small-town diner like this. He had sharp features, dark eyes that seemed to look through you, and a way of moving that made Eva's skin crawl. They spoke quickly, in that same language, but Eva could pick up the occasional word: money, shipment, delivery. The conversation seemed to carry an undercurrent of urgency, and the man left with a brief nod, disappearing out the door as quickly as he had arrived. Eva's mind raced. What was going on here? She couldn't stop herself from wondering if the couple had ties to something dangerous, something illegal. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized how little she actually knew. She was just a waitress, a pregnant woman working a thankless job to make ends meet. She had no business getting involved in anything beyond her own little world. But every time she heard those foreign words, every time she saw the couple whispering in their booth, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change in her life, something she had no control over. It was during one of these afternoons, as Eva wiped down the counter, that she overheard something that would set everything in motion. The couple had arrived, as usual, and sat in their booth, whispering to each other. Eva was still cleaning the counter when the woman suddenly caught her eye. There was something in her gaze, a look that was both urgent and calculating. For a moment, Eva thought the woman might say something, but she just turned back to her companion and continued their conversation. But Eva's heart was pounding now, the words she overheard playing on a loop in her mind. The shipment's tomorrow, the woman had said in that low voice. The money has to be ready. We can't delay this. Eva froze, her mind racing. A shipment? Money? What was going on? She quickly turned away, trying to keep her composure. She didn't want to draw attention to herself. But the seed of suspicion had been planted, and it was growing quickly, consuming her thoughts. What was she supposed to do with this information? She had no idea. But one thing was clear, she couldn't just ignore it. The next few days passed uneventfully, but Eva couldn't shake the feeling that something was building, that something was about to happen. She kept her eyes on the couple, watching them more closely than she ever had before. But they were always so composed, so calm. They seemed to live in their own world, untouched by anything going on around them. Eva tried to convince herself that it was all just her imagination, that she was reading too much into things. But deep down, she knew it wasn't. There was something going on, something she couldn't ignore. Then, one night, the diner was busier than usual. The usual crowd of regulars had come in for their evening meals, and the chatter of the diners filled the air. Eva was moving quickly, her feet aching from the constant motion, when she saw the couple again. They were sitting at their usual booth, speaking in that quiet, foreign language. But this time, something was different. The man from the other day, the one who had looked so out of place, was sitting across from them. Eva didn't approach them, but she couldn't help but overhear snippets of their conversation. It has to be tonight, the man said in a low voice. If we don't get it tonight, it's all over. Eva felt a chill run down her spine. She had no idea what they were talking about, but she knew it couldn't be good. The word tonight echoed in her mind. Whatever was going to happen, it was going to happen soon. She had no idea how, but she knew she had to be ready. The woman's warning, you shouldn't listen to things that aren't meant for you, suddenly felt a lot more like a threat than a casual comment. By the end of her shift, Eva was exhausted, her mind consumed by the thoughts of the couple and the strange things she had overheard. She didn't know what to do with the information, but she knew one thing, she couldn't just walk away. She couldn't ignore it. Something was happening right under her nose, and she was somehow tangled up in it, whether she liked it or not. When she arrived home that night, her apartment was quiet. The kids were asleep, and the weight of the day settled heavily on her shoulders. She sat down at the small kitchen table, staring at the empty chair across from her. Luke had been gone for months, and it still hurt to think about him. But now, with the looming uncertainty of the couple's plans and the pressure of raising her children alone, she felt a sense of responsibility that went beyond just herself. Whatever was going on with them, whatever danger was lurking, it wasn't just her problem, it was everyone's problem. Eva didn't know what she was getting herself into, but she knew that she couldn't back down. The pieces were slowly falling into place, but she didn't know how to connect them. She had no idea who to trust, no idea who to turn to. The weight of the unknown hung over her like a dark cloud, and the uncertainty was eating away at her. The next morning, she found herself at the diner, slipping into her uniform with the same sense of dread that had been with her the last few days. But this time, something was different. As she walked into the kitchen to grab her apron, she was greeted by one of the regulars, an older man named Bob who had been coming to the diner for years. He was a quiet man, often sitting by himself, sipping his coffee and reading the newspaper. But today, he looked at her with a strange expression, his eyes narrowed. "You know," he said softly, his voice low, "there's something strange going on with those two." Eva froze, her breath catching in her throat. Was he talking about the couple? Her heart skipped a beat as she realized that Bob knew something. "What do you mean?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Bob leaned in slightly, glancing around the kitchen as if checking to make sure no one else was listening. "I've seen them with some bad folks," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "People who aren't the kind of people you want to mess with. You be careful, kid. Something's not right about them." Eva's blood ran cold. She had no idea how Bob knew, but she couldn't shake the feeling that he was telling the truth. The pieces were starting to fit together, but Eva was no closer to understanding what was really happening. One thing was clear, she was in deeper than she had ever imagined, and there was no way out now. Eva couldn't shake the tension that gripped her chest as she went about her work. The diner felt more like a prison now, each clink of silverware, each buzz of the coffee machine, each whisper between customers only adding to the growing unease. The couple, always seated at the same booth, seemed to haunt her thoughts. No matter how hard she tried to focus on her job, every glance in their direction brought back memories of their hushed conversations, the strange urgency in their voices. She tried to tell herself it wasn't her problem, that they were just two people who didn't belong here, but the gnawing feeling in her gut told her otherwise. That afternoon, the diner was quieter than usual. Eva found herself wiping down the counter for the third time in half an hour, trying to distract herself from the growing sense of dread. She glanced up to see the couple enter, just as they did every day. The man, with his dark eyes and sharp features, seemed more on edge today. The woman, who had once appeared so calm, now looked almost nervous. There was something different about them today, something that made Eva's heart race. They sat in their usual booth, but this time, the woman didn't look at her with the same disinterested gaze. Instead, she glanced around, her eyes flickering over the room as if searching for someone, or something. Eva's heart thudded in her chest. She couldn't ignore the feeling that this was the moment things were about to change. As she moved toward the table to take their order, Eva heard the woman speak, her voice low but sharp. "It has to be done by tonight. There's no other way." The words sent a chill down Eva's spine. Whatever they were involved in, it wasn't just a matter of money anymore, it was dangerous. Her instincts screamed at her to stay out of it, to just do her job and keep her head down. But she couldn't. Not now. Something was pulling her in, forcing her to listen, to understand. She had never been one to ignore her gut feelings, and it was telling her that the next few hours would change everything. After delivering their food, Eva tried to keep busy in the back of the diner, but her thoughts kept drifting back to them. She couldn't stop wondering about the shipment they had mentioned the other day. What was it? Drugs? Weapons? Something far more sinister? And who were they really working with? She had seen the man from the other day, the one with the cold, calculating gaze, slip into the diner once again. This time, he didn't sit with the couple. Instead, he walked straight up to the counter, his eyes locking with hers as he approached. Eva felt a lump form in her throat. There was something unsettling about the way he looked at her, like he knew something she didn't, something she wasn't supposed to know. "How's business today?" he asked casually, leaning against the counter. Eva forced a smile, trying to appear nonchalant, but her heart was racing. "Same as always," she replied, her voice betraying a hint of nervousness. "Busy, but nothing out of the ordinary." The man gave a slight nod, his lips curling into a tight smile. "Good," he said, his voice still carrying that chilling calmness. "You're doing well here. Keep it up." He left a tip that was far too generous for a simple coffee, then turned on his heel and walked out. Eva stood frozen for a moment, her mind reeling. What was that all about? He had looked at her as if he knew something, as if he was measuring her every reaction. And what was he doing here, really? There was no way she was the only one who noticed the strange dynamic between the couple and this man. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, that everything she did was under some sort of scrutiny. It was an unsettling thought, one that left her feeling exposed and vulnerable. As the day wore on, the diner became more crowded, and the noise of customers filled the air. But Eva couldn't focus on any of it. Her mind kept drifting back to the couple and the strange man. By the time her shift was over, the unease in her chest had only grown stronger. She had to do something. She couldn't just sit idly by and let whatever was happening unfold around her. But what could she do? She wasn't a detective or a hero. She was just a waitress trying to make ends meet. Eva decided to stay a little longer, hoping to find some sort of clue or piece of information that would make sense of it all. She hid in the back, pretending to clean, but in reality, she was watching the couple through the kitchen window. It was then that she saw something that made her blood run cold. The man from earlier, the one who had been so calculating, so unnervingly calm, was walking toward the couple's booth. This time, he was not alone. Two other men, dressed in dark suits and carrying briefcases, joined him. The group huddled together, speaking in low tones, the language foreign to Eva's ears. They looked around, making sure no one was paying attention before the man in the suit slid something across the table to the couple. It was a small envelope, but Eva could see the way the woman's eyes widened when she saw what was inside. The man quickly grabbed it and stuffed it into his coat pocket, then nodded at the others, who stood up and walked out without a word. Eva's mind raced as she watched them leave. What was that envelope? Was it money? Information? Whatever it was, it had to be important. She had never seen the couple act like that before, so hurried, so desperate. But now, she knew one thing for sure, this wasn't just some innocent misunderstanding. This was something much bigger, something that had the potential to change everything for her and the entire community. Her thoughts were interrupted by a sharp voice. Eva. Her manager, Dave, had appeared in the doorway, looking annoyed. "Are you just going to stand there all night, or are you going to finish up your shift?" Eva snapped out of her trance and quickly nodded. "Sorry, Dave. I'll finish up now." But as she wiped down the counters one last time, her thoughts were consumed by the events she had just witnessed. She didn't know what she was going to do with this information, but she knew one thing, she couldn't let it go. There was something dangerous happening right under her nose, and she was somehow tangled up in it. And now, the question was, what would she do next? Would she risk everything to find out the truth, or would she turn a blind eye and walk away? She didn't know the answer yet, but one thing was certain, her life was about to change forever. Eva couldn't stop thinking about the events she had witnessed the previous night. Her mind replayed the moments over and over again, each time adding more layers of confusion and fear. She tried to shake it off, tried to convince herself it was all just a coincidence, that she was overthinking everything. But deep down, she knew that wasn't true. What she had seen at the diner was far from ordinary, and she couldn't ignore the feeling that something was terribly wrong. As the days went by, the couple continued to visit the diner. Every time they walked in, Eva felt her heart race. They were always polite, always calm, but there was an undercurrent of tension that seemed to follow them. They no longer spoke in hushed tones when they talked to each other, but the strange, foreign man who had joined them that day was still a fixture in the background. He would arrive shortly after they did, sitting at a table in the corner, always watching. Eva began to feel like a pawn in their game, unable to escape their presence. It wasn't until Thursday afternoon that the situation took a terrifying turn. Eva had just finished serving a table of regulars when she saw the woman, the one who always sat with the man, walk up to the counter. Eva's stomach churned as she forced a smile. "Can I get you anything?" she asked, her voice betraying none of the nervousness she felt. The woman, who had always been cool and collected, seemed different today. Her usual calm demeanor was replaced with an unmistakable sense of urgency. She leaned over the counter, her voice barely above a whisper. "You need to listen to me," she said, glancing over her shoulder to make sure no one was listening. "You don't know who I am, but I know who you are. And I need you to trust me." Eva's heart skipped a beat. The woman's words were cryptic, but Eva could tell there was something important she was about to say. She leaned in closer, her curiosity piqued. "What do you mean? What's going on?" The woman's eyes darted nervously around the room again, making sure no one was paying attention. "It's dangerous," she whispered. "You've seen something, and now they know you've seen it. You're not safe here. They're watching you, waiting for the right moment to act." Eva's mind raced as she processed her words. Who was watching her? What was she talking about? The woman continued, her voice growing even more urgent. "They'll try to make you think you're just imagining things, that you're overreacting. But you're not. Trust me, they'll do whatever it takes to cover up what's really going on. And you don't want to be in the middle of it." Eva felt a chill run down her spine. She could barely process everything the woman was saying, but one thing was clear, the situation had escalated far beyond what she had originally thought. The couple wasn't just involved in something shady, they were part of something much bigger, something dangerous. And now, she was entangled in it too. The woman took a deep breath, her gaze fixed firmly on Eva's. "I'm not asking for your help," she said. "But you need to leave. Leave this town, leave the diner, get away while you still can. If you stay, they'll come for you." Eva stood frozen in shock, her mind racing. She had no idea who the woman was, what she was involved in, or why she was warning her. But the fear in her eyes was undeniable, and Eva couldn't ignore the urgency of her words. The woman quickly left without another word, disappearing into the crowd of patrons. Eva stood at the counter, her heart pounding in her chest, unsure of what to do next. For the rest of the day, Eva couldn't shake the woman's warning from her mind. She tried to focus on her work, but her thoughts kept drifting back to what she had said. Who were these people? What was so dangerous about the situation? And most importantly, why was she being dragged into it? That evening, after her shift ended, Eva walked home with a sense of dread hanging over her. The streets were eerily quiet, the only sound coming from the rustling of leaves in the wind. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being followed, that someone was watching her every move. She quickened her pace, her footsteps echoing in the empty streets, but the feeling of unease only grew stronger. As she approached her apartment building, she saw something that made her blood run cold. A car was parked across the street, its engine idling, the headlights dimmed. It was the same car that the foreign man had been driving the day he came into the diner. She couldn't see inside, but she felt an unmistakable chill crawl up her spine. Someone was waiting for her. She knew it. With a sense of urgency, Eva hurried inside the building, her mind racing. She locked the door behind her and leaned against it, trying to steady her breath. But the fear in her chest wouldn't go away. She was in over her head now. There was no turning back. The woman's warning echoed in her mind, "They're watching you." Eva spent the night tossing and turning in her bed, the images of the strange couple and the foreign man haunting her thoughts. She knew she couldn't stay in the apartment, but where could she go? Who could she trust? Her life had been turned upside down in a matter of days, and she didn't know how to fix it. The diner, the job that had once been a lifeline, now felt like a trap. The people around her, the ones she had once considered harmless, now seemed like threats lurking in the shadows. The next morning, Eva called in sick to work. She needed time to think, to figure out what to do next. She didn't know if she was overreacting, if she was letting her imagination get the best of her, but she couldn't ignore the feeling that something terrible was coming. She was stuck in the middle of something much bigger than she had ever imagined. As the day wore on, Eva's sense of urgency grew. She couldn't sit around and wait for something to happen. She needed to act. But what could she do? Who could she trust? She didn't know, but she knew one thing: the clock was ticking, and if she didn't find a way out soon, she might not get another chance. Eva stepped out of her apartment and into the unknown, knowing that whatever happened next would change her life forever. Eva's mind was a whirlwind of confusion, fear, and urgency as she made her way to the city's outskirts, trying to think of a safe place to go. She didn't even know who to call for help. Her family lived hundreds of miles away, and the few friends she had seemed too distant to rely on in such a dire situation. The mysterious woman's words echoed in her mind: "They're watching you. Leave now." Her hands trembled as she clutched the strap of her purse tightly, walking faster with every step. The feeling of being followed hadn't left her, and she couldn't shake the unease that settled in her stomach. Even though she wasn't sure who was tracking her, it felt as though eyes were on her from every direction. The dark shadows of the alleyways, the stillness of the street corners, all seemed to hold secrets she wasn't sure she wanted to uncover. By the time she reached the outskirts of town, Eva was practically running. She didn't know where she was going, she just needed to get as far away from the diner, from the strangers who had already turned her world upside down. She looked around, trying to calm herself. The streets were deserted, but her breath was coming fast, her thoughts were racing. She wasn't safe here. She had never been in a situation like this before. Everything had been normal just a few days ago. Now, it felt like her life was spiraling into chaos, and there was no clear way out. Eva spotted a bus stop and hurried to sit down, hoping to catch her breath and figure out what to do. Her head was spinning. She ran her fingers through her hair, trying to clear the fog in her mind. She didn't even know if the woman at the diner had been trying to help her or if she was making things worse. Was it possible that she was just trying to get Eva to leave town for some other reason? The woman had been so vague, so cryptic, but her urgency had been real. It didn't feel like a lie. But then again, could Eva trust anyone right now? As Eva sat there, lost in thought, she noticed a familiar figure walking toward the bus stop. Her heart skipped a beat as she recognized the woman who had warned her at the diner. She stood frozen, unsure of what to do. The woman was wearing a coat, her hood pulled up to conceal her face, but it was unmistakably her. Eva stood up quickly, instinctively taking a step back. The woman approached her slowly, her footsteps deliberate. "Eva, it's me again," the woman said, her voice calm but filled with an urgency that made Eva's pulse race. "I need to talk to you." Eva felt a knot tighten in her chest. Her instincts screamed at her to run, to get away from this person who had already turned her life upside down. But there was something in the woman's eyes, something pleading, that made Eva hesitate. She knew she couldn't trust her fully, but she was also desperate for answers. "What do you want from me?" Eva asked, her voice shaky. The woman glanced around nervously, her eyes darting from side to side. "I know you're scared. I know you don't understand what's happening, but I'm here to help you." Eva crossed her arms defensively. "I don't need your help. I need to know what's going on. Why are these people after me? Who are they? The woman hesitated, glancing at Eva with a sad look in her eyes. It's not that simple. I can't explain everything right now, but you're in danger. The man you saw at the diner, the one who always sits in the corner, he's not just some tourist. He's involved in something far bigger, something dangerous. And you've gotten too close. Eva's heart sank as the weight of her words settled in. What do you mean? Why is he after me? The woman looked down, clearly conflicted. It's not about you, not directly. It's about what you've seen, about what you might know without even realizing it. They'll do whatever it takes to protect their secrets, and anyone who threatens those secrets becomes a target. Eva swallowed hard. What secrets? What are they involved in? The woman shook her head. I can't say more. But I can tell you this, they're watching you. You have to leave before it's too late. Eva's mind was spinning. She couldn't understand it all. Who were these people? Why had they chosen her? And why had she walked into this web of danger simply by working at a diner? She looked at the woman, who seemed just as lost and scared as she felt. For the first time, Eva wondered if the woman was more than just a warning. Maybe she had been caught up in something too, and now she was just as desperate as Eva to escape. The woman stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. You can't go back to the diner. It's too dangerous. They'll be watching you there. They know where you live, they know everything. You need to disappear. Eva's heart raced as the implications of her words hit home. The woman was asking her to leave everything behind, her job, her life, everything she had worked for. But the alternative was even worse. Staying meant becoming a target, and she wasn't sure how much longer she could stay ahead of them. She could feel the walls closing in. But where would I go? Eva asked, her voice cracking. I don't have anywhere to run. The woman hesitated, then pulled out a small piece of paper from her pocket. This is the name of someone who can help you, she said, pressing it into Eva's hand. He's your best chance. He knows how to get people out of situations like this. He can keep you safe. Eva stared at the paper for a moment, feeling the weight of the decision she was about to make. She had no choice. She couldn't go back to the life she had known. Everything was changing, and she had to act quickly, or risk losing everything. The woman took a step back, her eyes filled with a mix of concern and relief. I'm sorry, she whispered, but this is the only way. You have to trust me. Eva nodded, her thoughts racing as she looked at the piece of paper in her hand. Thank you, she whispered, though she wasn't sure if she could ever truly thank this woman for what she had done. Without another word, the woman turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving Eva alone with her thoughts. Eva took a deep breath, her mind whirling with fear, uncertainty, and the weight of the choices she now faced. She could run, disappear, and maybe find safety, maybe. Or she could stay and fight, face whatever danger lay ahead. There was no turning back now. She had no choice but to make the call. Eva sat there for what felt like an eternity, staring at the small piece of paper in her hand. It seemed so simple, yet it held the key to everything she needed, everything she had to do next. She wasn't sure if this person could actually help her, if he was even real, but she didn't have the luxury of doubt. She needed to act, and she needed to do it quickly. Her life, as she knew it, was gone. There was no returning to the familiar, no going back to her old routine at the diner. No more being a quiet waitress trying to make ends meet for her unborn child. The world she had known was no longer a safe place. As she glanced around, the streets seemed darker, more menacing. Her pulse quickened, and her breath hitched. Every passing car felt like it could be the one with eyes watching her. She could almost hear the footsteps following her again, that invisible threat hovering at her back. The moment she stood up from the bus stop bench, she saw a car slow down, its headlights catching her gaze. Was it them? Was it the people the woman had warned her about? Eva's heart pounded in her chest, but she couldn't afford to panic. She had already been walking on edge for days, and this was just another test, another part of this nightmare she now found herself in. She pulled her coat tighter around her and started walking briskly, ignoring the sensation of someone following too closely behind. Every movement felt amplified. She didn't dare turn around. Instead, she made her way toward the address on the paper, keeping her head down, her face shielded under the collar of her coat. The name the woman had given her was cryptic, but there was no time to waste. She wasn't even sure what she expected when she arrived, but the sense of urgency gnawed at her. The neighborhood where she found herself wasn't exactly unfamiliar but felt like a different world entirely. The houses were larger, more spaced out, and the streets had a quieter, almost eerie quality. The hum of city life felt distant, and the air was thick with something, an unsettled feeling that crawled along her skin. She checked the address on the piece of paper again. It led her to an old, red-bricked building at the end of a narrow street. There were no signs, no indication of what this place was, and that only made her heart race more. She approached the door slowly, hesitating just outside as if it might swallow her whole. But she couldn't go back. Not now. She had to know what came next. She rang the doorbell. It was a sound that echoed through the emptiness, and for a moment, she considered running. But there was nowhere else to go. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps from inside, and the door opened just a crack. A man in his mid-40s stood there, his expression unreadable but sharp. He looked her up and down, then glanced past her, almost as if he was checking for something, or someone, else. "You must be Eva," he said, his voice low, calculated. It sent a shiver down her spine. How did he know her name? She nodded, swallowing hard. "I need help," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know who else to turn to." The man didn't say anything at first, just motioned for her to come inside. As she stepped into the dimly lit hallway, she noticed how quiet the place was. It was almost too quiet. The air was stale, like it hadn't been disturbed in years. She followed him into a small, sparsely furnished room, where a single lamp illuminated a desk with papers scattered across it. "Sit," the man said, pointing to a chair across from the desk. He closed the door behind him with a soft click, and she sank into the chair, trying to calm the racing thoughts in her head. "I'm sorry, but I don't know who you are or what's going on," Eva said, her hands trembling in her lap. I don't know where to go. I don't know who to trust." The man studied her for a moment, then nodded. "I understand," he said. "This is a dangerous game you're in now. You're being hunted, and the people after you will stop at nothing to get what they want. I don't know what you overheard, but it was enough to make you a target." Eva's heart skipped. "But I didn't mean to hear anything. I was just working at the diner, just trying to make money." "I know," the man said quietly. "It's never your fault. But now that you know what you know, there's no going back. You're in it whether you like it or not." Eva's head swam. She hadn't asked for any of this. She had just wanted to work, to make a living for herself and her baby. Now, she was sitting in some stranger's office, trying to understand how her life had spiraled so far out of control. "Who are they?" she asked, desperation creeping into her voice. "What do they want from me?" The man sighed, leaning back in his chair. He seemed to weigh his words carefully before speaking again. "They're part of a much larger operation, Eva. You stumbled upon something they didn't want you to see. I don't know the specifics, but whatever it was enough to make them consider you a liability." "Liability?" Eva echoed. "But I didn't see anything. I didn't even know who they were." The man's eyes narrowed. "It doesn't matter. You could have seen something without even realizing it. That's how it works. You can't trust anyone who's not on your side, and you can't stay here. You need to disappear. Eva's stomach churned. Disappear, she repeated. What does that mean? You want me to leave? Just leave everything behind? Yes, the man said simply. You don't have a choice. These people have eyes everywhere. If they find you're done. Eva felt a wave of panic rise in her chest. How could she leave everything? How could she leave the life she had built, the baby she was carrying? It felt impossible. But where would I go? What would I do? You'll figure it out, he said, his voice growing colder. There's no time to waste. You have to be gone by tomorrow. Tomorrow. The word echoed in her head. She had no choice but to do what he said. She couldn't afford to stay, and she couldn't afford to keep running without direction. She had to disappear, and for the first time, the weight of her reality set in. She was truly alone, a small player in a dangerous game. As she stood to leave, the man handed her a folder. This will help you get started. You don't have much time. Be careful, Eva. If you do this wrong, it could be the end of everything. She nodded, her hands shaking as she took the folder. She wanted to say something, ask him more, but she didn't have the words. She just wanted to leave, to run far away from the people hunting her. She walked out of the building, clutching the folder tightly, knowing her life was about to change forever. The door clicked shut behind her. She had no way of knowing what lay ahead, no way of knowing whether she would ever feel safe again. But there was no going back now. She had to survive.